I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Visitor Network TV. With us today is KevinKuester, who's been here before when he was on the HDC. Most recently, about 3 weeks ago, he resigned from the HDC in his chair. And we thought it'd be good to get together and talk a little bit about why you resigned and what you see the future of the HDC being. So why don't we get into that?
That's a big question, Dan.
Well, no, I'll start with a small question. Why did you resign?
Well, I'll get into that, but I think a good way to start perhaps is I was looking back. I've got quite a stack of emails on various subjects, all relating to the HDC, and I was kind of going through those, and I noticed that I've been called many things. I've been called the vigilante. I've been called the scumbag. I've been called the mouthpiece. I've been called a dictator. I've been called a homophobe. I've been called just about everything else. But recently I was called quitter, and that doesn't feel all that bad considering all the other names. And I like to say that I resigned. I haven't quit. I do plan to. I did quit the HDC, just to be clear. But I look at it as a stepping stone, hopefully onto other things to sort of tackle some of these issues. I found that something odd happens when people come around the table at HDC, and I've been around it long enough to have watched it, long enough to have tried many different approaches to deal with it, but it kind of becomes like when I was back in the 5th and 6th grade and you're out at recess, and some of the kids on recess are bullies, and they come from all facets of life, and they can make life uncomfortable for a lot of people. So it's for me, it's not so much about the people themselves, but about the attitudes and the behavior that's taking place. And I saw a little bit too much of it, and decided that was not an approach, that was not a game that I wanted to play any longer.
Let me interrupt you for just a second, Kevin. Is it not true that much of this, what you're talking about, is actually documented in tapes that are on the town's website?
Absolutely. One of the first things I did when I did become chair was to work with town administration to get, the room which is equipped to do video, get that up and running. And I have to say that the town manager was very helpful in doing that. She jumped on that right away. We got that up and running within a week or two, and it's all there. You gotta, I don't know that anybody in their right mind wants to sit around and watch, HDC meetings for 4.5 hours. But there's some real nuggets in there of just exactly what goes on, and I'd encourage people to look particularly at the things that impact them in their neighborhoods, general comments. On the town website, you can just click under videos, and you can actually drill down into each of the sections. You don't have to watch the whole thing, and there's some interesting things on there. And that worked pretty well to kind of keep some of the behavior in check. And after about a month or so of that, it's kind of like nobody's paying attention to the to the eyeglass in the corner, and it started to kind of get off a little bit. And particularly for me, it was coming out of a private sector world, if you will, and not having been in politics, and certainly not having run any kind of a political board, like that. You can only do so much. If some of the people that represent clients, and whether they be architects or lawyers or whomever, I would probably resign that client if they were coming to work with my business. I wouldn't want to be doing business with them. And the same thing goes, for employees. If I had employees that were conducting themselves like that, I would not want to have that employee around any longer. That's easier said than done when it comes to politics, and then when it comes to having people that are, that live in your community, that are, some are elected officials, some aren't, but it's a it's a sensitive thing, and I particularly was disturbed with the way staff was being treated. I've been a big champion of the staff, and I don't see it as like the commission's job to manage the staff, and somehow that crept in there, and things are also documented not on the town website, but also on all the email correspondence that goes back and forth. Those are all public documents. They can all be looked at, and people have asked, what happened here, what happened there, and to sit and go through every piece of correspondence wouldn't serve any purpose. But if people want to find out and want to dig around it, they can find out a lot of information. So for me, I don't want to get stuck on that. I want to try to figure out how, like as a community, we can solve this issue. Because frankly, as I kind of came down the pike with this, I was seeing decisions that were made that were influenced more about who was voting rather than what the issue was at hand. And it just became that this is getting way too charged to accomplish the kind of goals that I wanted to accomplish. One of my main ones was to be able to have a civil discussion and disagree on things, but not turn into shouting and screaming at each other. So I've been trying to look at it more from that this is not an HDC problem, but rather I think it's a community problem. And
what can the community do?
What does that mean?
What does that mean, and what can be done about it?
How do we tackle that? I think it gets into looking, a little more closely at how we set up, the offices on the commission. Do we continue having them being elected as they are? Should they go back to appointed? Should there be some elected, some appointed? Those all have their pros and cons, and that's probably one avenue to go through. That the town has actually put quite a bit of effort into having guidelines and kind of protocol as to how meetings work, as to how the commissions work, what's acceptable behavior, what's acceptable protocol. But it's only as good as people want to adhere to it. I found out interesting things that when it comes to running a meeting, following Robert's Rules of Order, the chairman has got the ability to set the agenda amongst other things, but also to stop disruptive behavior, to refocus the agenda, refocus the questions. But the same thing doesn't apply to email, interestingly enough. And we have
Mr. Roberts didn't concede.
Well, no, and and one of the things I did is I asked town council about this, because it's like, how is it that we don't have to deal with this in a meeting, but when we get back home, we have a stack of really relentless and I think rather inappropriate emails coming not only from within the commission, but from within client representatives, and it's like something's wrong here when that's allowed to happen. And the response from town council was, well, law hasn't quite caught up with technology. So maybe there's something there to help rein some of this in. But I think it's also a dynamic of us, as a community, deciding how far do we want to let some of this, activity go. Not just the behavior, but the stuff that sort of drives it. It's from my experience, it's like a lot of people coming here wanting things that they think it should be like Nantucket, that they've always wanted to do, and that's great. For most places, I don't happen to think that everybody should be able to come to Nantucket and just do whatever it is that they want to do. So greed and money is a big factor in that. I think that we have some very good practicing architects, on the island. They know, what's approvable and and what isn't. A lot of time gets eaten up by them representing their clients and having to bring in what the client wants, even though They know it's not going to fly. There's a tremendous amount of time gets consumed by that kind of activity, and so I think there's some general education about about what's appropriate and what isn't. But I think that there probably is a possibility for some sort of a work group to evolve out of this, and my hope there is that I can be a voice to be heard and to be thought of from the Board of Selectmen, so that they aren't having to deal with one voice or one special interest group, but rather somebody who doesn't have a vested interest in either construction, real estate law, or anything else. I'm just trying to do what I think would be appropriate for where we all live.
Some of this stuff has been going on for years and years and years and years. And it's almost ingrained, I guess, in the sort of the HDC process. One of the things that I don't remember whether you and I talked about this before, but I know I've asked candidates for the HDC, is shouldn't a lot more of the work be left to the staff? The preliminary work and the preliminary judgment as to whether something should be brought to the commission or not. I mean, that's the way it works in virtually every other body, but it doesn't seem to work that way with the HDC.
Yes, it. I think we I guess, kind of speaking as my previous place, staff has a lot on their plate. As you know, and I think we did talk about briefly, they had some reductions in staff. And one of the things I recommended to town administration kind of before I had resigned was to perhaps consider getting some people like, project manager type people that would be able to take care of just making sure the files are in the right spot, making sure that this gets attached and that gets moved along. Kind of a traffic coordinator, so that you could free up the administrative, people to do more, of the design review things, to do more things with enforcement, to do more things with inspections. And that's been met pretty receptively. I noticed in the paper today, in fact, there's a couple of ads for some administrative support within the Plus department. So I think that's starting to happen. Applications are up 42%, I believe, from 2010 levels, and 23% from last year's levels, year to date. There's been some meetings where there's been over, like 100 applications. And more are going on consent, but it simply is getting down to the amount of time that the staff has to deal with it. They're only allowed 35 hours to work a week, so you take 5 hours out for a meeting. That leaves you 30 hours, and you've got 3 sets of meetings to get ready for, and sometimes you've got 2 major meetings, one on Thursday night, one on Tuesday night, one on Thursday afternoon. So you can kind of do the math and see there's not much there. So I think that's a goal that everybody would like to see happen. I'm hopeful that they're able to get some staffing in place to do that. At the same time, if the staff that's there didn't have to deal with the relentless inquiries from pretty much the same people, quizzing them on this and that, asking why not this and that, and quite frankly, sometimes being disrespectful and calling them lazy and everything else. And you get an email like that, it screws up your day. I don't care who you are. It takes an hour out of the day. It's like it's sort of like we have people who say they want to help, but it's a bit like throwing anchors in the boat when the boat's sinking. It's not doing a lot of good. Yes, I think we do need to get more things on consent. Sometimes there's a trick that goes with the consent, and I might have mentioned that before. People will get something approved, say, without a balcony. They'll come back and simply ask for the balcony, and if the administrator isn't looking at it closely, they can see, well, yeah, balcony by itself would probably be, a consent item. But you know what? It was denied as part of the application, so who are we trying to fool? Right. So it takes time to go through those kinds of things.
We're about out of time. So is there anything you'd like to else to leave us with? I mean, I think you're going to stay involved in trying to get things fixed. Is that true? That's what I take away.
Yes,
from what you said.
I intend to stay, engaged. There's, other community things to get involved in. This is something that's important to me. Before we go, I just want to be sure, to mention that, previously there had been kind of a black hole with town administration, and there wasn't really any communication. And that was one accomplishment that I felt I did make. I've got I like to think I've got a good relationship with the town manager. She has been very receptive. She has been very encouraging. And they've been a pleasure to work with. I have also been engaged, with some of the selectmen. They are very supportive. So I think that together, I'm hoping I can do more as a citizen and sleep a little bit better on Tuesday nights. So thank you very much, Dan. I look
Kevin,
forward to coming back and filling you in as, things move along.
That'd be great. Thank you,
Great,
Kevin
thank you.
Kuester.